Look at all you beautiful people hanging out tonight. I get, Mark Mandic on the show and a whole bunch of people show up. That's how we do it. I was going to do this Scrambler episode with a little bit of my own commentary and opinion. And Mark gave me a call today and he said, if we're going to have this conversation, why don't you have me around? Actually, I suggested he come join. He did not invite himself. He wouldn't do that. But nonetheless, Mark Mandic is here, and he's going to take us all to school. Thanks for being here. Let's get to it. What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for being here tonight. Tonight's a great example of why I love this community. First off, spirited debate is fun. We only seem to argue about stuff that we care about, which is also cool. And I don't even think argue is the right word, but we've probably all seen the Scrambler snakes. We've heard all kinds of opinions. And if you don't know Mark Mandic, he is from Marcus Jane Ball Pythons, and he is the one, I don't know, do you call it prove it out? Do you call it identify it? Most related to the gene, did a lot of the work on the gene, if not all the work on it. I'm calling it a gene. We'll call it the Scrambler tonight, and we'll let Mark make his case. But he's got some cool stuff. And aside from any debate or verbose, whatever, chatter, comments, anything else, he's got some new animals that he's never shared with anybody before. These are 2026 hatchlings, and probably the most stripped down Scrambler that he's ever made. Anyhow, I don't know about anybody else, and I don't want to question the veracity of anybody else's posts. So we'll just leave it to Mark's information tonight. But we got some cool pictures, some cool stuff to unveil, and possibly, sorry for the slow delay, we were messing with a secondary camera for an actual camera footage of an actual snake. But if not, we've got plenty of high resolution photos that we'll share with you. Not too much in the way of updates. ProperRoyals.com is in the process of being updated with current inventory. So I've already uploaded some inventory. If you haven't checked in the past 2 or 3 days, there's new inventory on there. And then I've got some more to get going. Had a kind of a hectic day today. I did not get to uploading those today, but those will all be put into Husbandry Pro and will be updated on ProperRoyals.com. Couple thank yous coming to you tonight, ad-free by the good folks at Palm Street. If you're into live selling and that's kind of your specialty and what you enjoy and what you see as the way of the future, go check out Palm Street. They do welcome reptile sales. You don't have to talk in code and all that crap. Go there, interact with your audience, and sell some animals. So check that out if you haven't seen it before. 70 of you. Hello. By the way, thank you for hanging out. If you haven't been here before, my name's Adam. This is Proper Royals Live. And I do this every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing and all of that good stuff. So thanks for being here. Other announcements, May 31st will be my next expo in person. That is Ed and Emily's Snake Discovery Show in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'll be there in person, and then 3 shows in June. So stay tuned on that, but nothing for a little while. But like I say, ProperRoyals.com is live. I'm not going to go through everybody that's here. There's a really great problem. There's a ton of you. Just thank you for being here. So that we don't have too many interruptions tonight, I want to say thanks to Vision Cages and Racks. Their new Versa rack for rodents is out. I talked to Mark today, Mark Beavers, that is, from Vision. He said that those are going to start shipping at the end of this week. So it's pre-orders on the website, but they are starting to ship at the end of this week. Also, they unveiled the Visionarium this week. I saw it at Tinley, and I said, man, this thing is so cool. And then he told me the price, $144 on the website today. You could pre-order it. The small one, or the smallest, I think it's still 35 quarts. It's plenty big. It's a good size. These Visionariums are like the cross between a terrarium and a tub. and they have all the vision ingenuity and engineering and tweaks and perks on it. So very, very cool. Check out the new Versa rack that has a whole lot of the features from the Ultra racks from a couple years ago that they unveiled, as well as the brand new, I think just unveiled yesterday, but unveiled Visionariums. Those are cool. Going to change the game for enclosures. I promise you. I'm already have the wheels turning on how I can sell ball pythons in the Visionariums for first time or uncertain pet owners, or people who want their animals a little bit more on display than say a rack system. So I think it's going to be very cool. Go check that out from Vision. And as always, thanks to Redline Shipping. If you would like service when you need it, if you would like a phone number to call for help, direction, guidance on shipping your animals safely as the weather changes, check out redlineshipping.com and get yourself $5 off of your next shipping label with the promo code proper5. All right. We will, I'll tell you about the other advertisers here just a little bit later. All of these brands are people from within our industry supporting our industry. Mark Mandic is on the show. He's in the green room. We're going to bring him on in just a moment. One of the people that I'm humbled by all support that I get, but there's some people that I'm like, why do they even take an interest in me? And I assure you, it's not because I'm writing massive checks. We have done some business before, but Mark has always been generous with his time, generous with his welcome when I've been in the Toronto area. And I'm just thankful to have him on. So when he saw my promo that I had originally made today, where it was just sort of going to be my kind of commentary opinion slot, and he called me and he said, "Hey, I'd love to send you some pictures and stuff." And I said, why don't you come join? And the show will be infinitely better. And he was plenty kind to oblige. So please welcome back to the Proper Royal stage. I'm sorry, while I've got everybody's attention and so I don't forget, speaking of people that are very cool, next week I have DJ Van Wyck from Reptiles for Centuries, all the way from South Africa, joining the show live. So be sure to check that out as well. Next week, same time, same place. Now, please welcome back to the Proper Royal stage, Mr. Mark Mandic from Marcus Jane Ball Pythons. Mark, how are you, sir?
Adam, how are you?
I'm excited. This is cool. I can't even keep up with the comments. I have no idea what people are saying. I'm sure it's all very pleasant, but I'm excited. We've got a good show, and it's not often that I get to sit down with you and spend, a little bit of time uninterrupted. This is cool. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I saw that you were making scrambled eggs this morning, and I thought, hey, here's an in for me. So I gave you a call, and you overcooked them, by the way, always.
Yeah. Even with all these years, breakfast is not my forte.
It's not, even after being in the restaurant business for so long.
In true story, a chef never got off my ass. He was always like, you should never have any brown on scrambled eggs. They should always only be yellow and white. If they're brown, you've done it wrong. I was like, you know what? I don't care that much about eggs.
I do like scrambled eggs. I have to admit, I really do. And I take exception to brown scrambled eggs. So
okay, well then you're sophisticated, well-versed gentleman. Then is unlike myself.
There you go.
How has life been? I haven't seen you since September, I think. How's things?
Well, you can relate because you live. We discussed it today that where you live in Minneapolis is basically as far north as I live. So we can complain about, the weather in the winter together. And it was an awful winter. It was cold. There was a lot of snow. And, but you make the best of it. We had the hot tub going all winter and we'd go out in it every night. Sometimes we'd have to wear toques. And, but it was good. It makes you appreciate spring and summer and fall way more, I think, with the winter.
I agree. And while we're talking about spring and delicious foods, I
Hmm.
found my first 2 morel mushrooms of the season. Spring is officially here,
Wow.
and the most delicious food that I can imagine eating is going to spring up all around me. And I found 2 of them today. So this is an exciting day for me. I'm
Do you
excited to see.
ever look for wild leeks?
Um, Not leeks, but we have things called ramps, and the ramps
Okay.
come up when the morels do. So yeah, I'll saute leeks or the ramps and the morels
Hmm.
together, and I'll whip them into a compound butter with herbs. And let me tell you, that's some pretty good pasta, steaks, chicken,
Yeah.
pork, anything. I
Yeah.
mean, just spread it on a cracker. It's all right with me. That's I
Oh,
would.
yeah.
I don't want to turn this
Absolutely.
into a food show, but I would quit eating meat if I could have fresh morels year round. I would. Oh my goodness, be fantastic.
We found them in an area that we hike,
Hmm.
and then I've yet to find them since. So maybe once the weather gets better or something, but or maybe with all the rain that we've been having, that's we'll see them.
I
But yeah,
bet.
yeah, we got quite a few of them.
I bet in the next 10 days, if you get out there, give it a shot. So,
Yeah.
um, how is it seems like the formality to ask people how their season is going, but what are you doing this season? Anything different? I think you've commented that you changed strategy a little bit or backed off strategy a little bit. What are you seeing for yourself this year with your pairings?
Well, this is, it's interesting. I started breeding earlier this year than I ever have. And as a result, I've had earlier clutches than I've ever had. And I started off with, virgin females, and I would pair them once, and that was
Hmm.
it. Wouldn't put a male in with them again. And it worked pretty good. But this year is kind of a regrouping year. I find the industry is changing a little bit or a lot, and I don't think this is the year to overproduce. And so I'm trying a few things, and I'm really, really cutting back in my clutch count. Last year I can't even tell you how many I did. Something like 59. This year I might do 30.
Mm.
In my peak, I did 148, but it's just too much work. I mean, I'm in semi-retirement, or I should be at this point, and I don't wanna work that hard, and so what I'm trying to do is produce really pretty snakes. I'm not going for triple hets or anything like that. Other people can chase that. I'm focusing more on, okay, if I go to a show and I put snakes on the table in my displays, are people going to be wowed? And sometimes it's not the most expensive snake that wows them. It's, just the wow snakes, the colorful snakes. So, eh, I don't know what you think, but I think we're shifting more towards a pet market than we are a breeder market. I think, getting more breeders is not as easy because it isn't as cheap as it once was as far as the upkeep of these animals,
Mm. Okay.
buying rats and stuff like that. And when you go to the show, people want pretty snakes. So I'm going for pretty, complete pretty.
I can't speak to the whole market. I could speak to my sweet spot has always kind of been what you're discussing. I want snakes that catch people's attention, turn their heads, and not necessarily like I don't know how to say it other than saying basically a $300 to $500 sweet spot of beautiful snakes has done me
Mhm.
really, really well. I would love to sell snakes that are more expensive. I would love to have that demand. My challenge is one, I don't know how many of those buyers are out there to go around. Secondly, I could produce the snakes that are quote more expensive, but if they don't sell, are they really more expensive? So,
Well,
um,
exactly, yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
there's that business challenge. So, um, that's always kind of been my thing, and I can't speak outside of that. I'm certainly working and investing towards some other angles, but it's gotten me this far. And sometimes I actually wonder if I need to be careful from as I dream bigger, quote bigger, that not to leave my sweet spot, kind of like not to leave what got me where I'm at. So I kind of wrestle with that. So this year is going to be a little bit of a test for me that way. But I think the beautiful show stopping, hey, what is that? Don't even tell me what the genes are. I just want to look at it for a minute. Those kinds of snakes are just always going to be the best, I think.
Well, I agree. And, I did a show this past weekend and I didn't have a snake on the table that was over $500. And I sold quite a few snakes. There were some, really nice ones. And people aren't as interested in the genes anymore as they are in the pretty. Because if it's a pet buyer, they're just interested in pretty. I also think that there was a day when all the breeders would come by your table and look, and because they wanted to get stuff. And I think a lot of breeders are pretty loaded right now with their own stuff that they don't need to buy other stuff, and they're choosing lanes, to go down instead of trying to produce everything. I mean, back in the day, in the early 2000s, there weren't many lanes to choose. So you kind of did go into all
Fair
of
enough.
them,
Yeah.
but now, holy smokes, there's a lot of lanes, you know.
So last sort of topic, just before we jump into the Scrambler stuff, we talk about pretty snakes. Obviously, pretty is in the eye of the beholder, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's another human, actually, let's not get into human beings. But what I'm saying is for
Let's
you,
not. Yeah.
yeah, that's why we like snakes, right? For you, what makes a pretty snake? If you had to put a process behind it, what would make a pretty snake for you?
Well, when the first snakes I bought were all normals. And so that's, the one end of the spectrum. And I went in the direction of orange. I don't know if you can tell that it's, one of my favorite colors. Because they really popped. And the first snake that really popped for me was the caramel albino. And I went from there and, bought hats, or bought a het male, produced possible hats to produce caramels. Eventually I bought caramels to breed to the possible hats to, shorten. And funny thing, there was no shed testing then. And so, I went that route, and, pastel was a snake that I got into. And piebalds were like rock stars. Clowns were just, they were a great pattern morph, but that was it. They weren't necessarily a great color morph that was going to, pop out at you as you walk by the table. And then, people started putting hypo into things, and then Mojave came along, and yellow belly, and so on and so on. But I was always striving for snakes that, when even somebody that wasn't into snakes, that they saw it, would be absolutely wowed.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the opinion I care most about, is what non-snake people think of my snakes. And because they're being honest, they're not going, oh, well, it has this gene, and that gene, so therefore I like this snake. No, they're just it's all based on looks, not personality or genes.
Very good. I try and wrestle with like explain, I know you enjoy wine. I try and wrestle with explaining to people, and all I can at the end of the day say is, here's what I enjoy and here's why I've sort of quantified that I like it. But I break it down in my mind to color, pattern, and contrast. And when those alignments, I mean, when it checks all three boxes is the best. And there's times where, colors just pop or patterns pop. But I'm always curious what other people's opinions are on that, because I just like hearing it. And then there's different ways that you sort of get enlightened and a new angle to see things. I got to interrupt for one reason, actually 50 reasons. Chris, thank you very much. We will get some nice aioli, a nice job on that. That's $50 to go a long way on that. All joking aside, guys, go check out Words Not Deeds 2 this year. It's to benefit veterans in Camp Freedom. And Chris at the Fat Man Nation and Jay at Greenline Morphs are heading that up. Dude, $50. Thank you very much. That's very kind. We'll put that to good use. Maybe not with Aioli, maybe a kind donation to the cause, man. Thank you. So Mark, I'm sure you've seen the comments and heard the chatter. What say you about Scrambler? Is it a gene? Is it a combo? Is it is it something? Is it some mystery that's floating around right behind you? What do we got going on here?
Well, I'm definitely think it's a gene. I don't think it's a combo. I think it makes amazing combos. That's why I called it the Scrambler, because it is, in my opinion, a gene. And it's not something that I just discovered. It's something that I've been working on since 2011, when I first, purchased a Super Orange Dream Fire male from Aussie Boyd's. And when I,
This one?
that is it right there.
Okay.
And I mean, so basically, Orange Dream came out, and I was friends with Ozzy, and I was a big, big supporter of the Orange Dream because I love orange. Nobody knew there was a super at this point, and it took him 8 years to finally, produce a super and prove it out. And when he did produce a super, I remember he called me right away and told me. And so I said, I'd like one of the super males, and it wasn't cheap at the time. I think I paid $10,500 or $11,000 US. Converted to Canadian, it's about $14,000. And this is the male that I got. Now, if you look at this male, that does not look, now looking back, you can produce Super Orange Dream Fires. They don't look like that. That looks more like a Desert Ghost in the body, the crispness and so on. So that's just what we thought Super Orange Dreams looked like. Okay. So I grew him up. I kept breeding my regular Orange Dream male, and then backing him up with this guy once he got big enough, because sometimes, young males are hit and miss.
Right.
And then he started, producing really, really nice snakes. At that point, I had some Orange Dream females and so on, and I was breeding him to those and producing some really, really kick-ass stuff, thinking, okay, this is what Super Orange Dreams produce. And I was selling animals, and Oz, obviously, he kept the best male in the group, and he was selling animals and so on. And it wasn't until, I bred it into Spider. And because back then, Spider was still a very hot commodity, and I would produce these snakes that had hardly any pattern on them whatsoever. And I thought, okay, that's what the effect it has on spiders. And I started seeing it consistently in some of the spiders that were coming out, and not consistently in other spiders. Okay. So some were completely different. So it's like, what's going on here? And it wasn't until I started breeding it into pieds, because, pieds were a great snake, but they weren't exactly the most colorful snake on the planet.
You want me to pop up one of the pieds?
Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
There we go.
So yeah, so this is what I started to produce, and seeing this pattern consistently, on the snake, which wasn't a typical pied pattern. And the other thing I noticed is it was taking a lot of the white away. And
aren't most of them like 80% like pattern almost? And it seems
absolutely.
that wide ringer is in a pretty consistent spot a lot of times too.
Right. So, I know I'm toying with this other camera over here. I'm going to put it on anyways. I apologize because it's got all the information on the screen. But this is a typical pied, right? So
Sure.
you've got your orange, you've got your two parallel lines, in all the saddles, right? And that's an Orange Dream right there. an Orange Dream pied. But that's very different from what you put up on the screen.
Right.
Okay. And I started seeing real consistency in this pattern. I also noticed when I was breeding it into hypos, because I was going for the Super Orange Dream hypo pied, just the regular hypos were super, super, super bright and very reduced. So that right there is a Super Orange Dream hypo pied. And again, it completely eliminates the extra, like the white, and goes very low white, and it scrambles the gene. And I remember getting a picture of one and showing my wife, and I said, this is kind of consistently happening. And I said, what do you think? She says, it's almost like the pattern scrambled. And I said, so I said, that's a really good name right there, the Scrambler. And there was a breeder up here. His name is Matt Pistone, and he was looking for a hypo-pied Orange Dream combo. And I said, well, I've got a Orange Dream pied het hypo male, or I've got an Orange Dream hypo het pied male. And I sent him pictures of both, and he ended up taking the pied. And I remember meeting him, and I said, look, I just want you to know I think something's going on here. It's strange. So keep me abreast of what you produce from this. Well, in the meantime, he had already purchased some pieds from me that were scramblers. Okay. Unbeknownst to him and unbeknownst to me. And he started breeding those. And on the exact same day, we both produced the most incredible Super Orange Dream hypopied. I think you have a picture of it there somewhere.
I got these are the only two pieds that I got to update. I got about 25 pictures, but to be able to update them all on here, or to upload them on here, I only got through these 8.
Okay.
But I've got a couple of the new ones as well, though. But I wanted to make sure I had the original and sort of an array of options here.
Yeah, it's the one that's in the perfect coil.
Let me see. Go ahead. I'll look though while you're talking though.
Yeah. So I just, started consistently producing these. And the other thing that I noticed was they weren't losing their color. They, at most, the Achilles heel of the ball python world is that they look great as babies, but then they brown out as adults. And, we've been looking for something that stays consistently bright and vibrant. And I noticed that these just got brighter and brighter as they aged. Now, Orange Dreams, that is one of the traits of Orange Dream is, you got to wait about 6 months to see the full color potential, but then they do start fading out. But, people say, oh, well, it's just an extension of Orange Dream. Well, I have Scrambler pieds with no Orange Dream in it whatsoever. And I've got quite a few of them. So
would you like to do one of the new ones? Do you want me to pop up the pied?
Yeah, the one that hatched out last week. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, if you want to switch your I don't know if you wanted to leave it on the lazy
I'm sorry.
display, or if you wanted to. That's okay. It's your
go.
call. But there he is.
Yeah.
Okay, take us through this thing.
Okay, so a lot of people were saying, well, it's attached to Orange Dream. Why don't you have snakes that don't have Orange Dream? Well, I do. I have produced them in the past, but my collection is loaded with Orange Dream, and I'm not exactly breeding to single gene normal females. I don't have those anymore.
Right.
So to find snakes that I could breed to kind of go back, narrow it down. So this clutch was a Orange Dream pied Scrambler, het axanthic, bred to a calico female, nothing special about her whatsoever, het axanthic, double het axanthic pied. And I got 7 eggs. I believe I have what is a base scrambler in there. Unfortunately, it's in shed right now. They're starting to shed all today. I kept on looking and said, please shed, please shed, please
Go,
shed.
go.
And I produced, and this is one of them. So this is just a scrambler pied, het axanthic. And people might go, well, how do you know it's pied? Well, if it's not pied, what is it?
If it's not pied, that's a hell of a single gene scrambler,
that's a
then,
hell
right?
of a single gene, exactly. But
Yeah,
I've hatched enough
take
of
your
them that I
pick, right?
know this is pied.
Yeah.
And and I also produced a axanthic version of it, if you want to pop that up.
Yeah, I didn't know if these are the ones that these have not been shared before. You guys could grab your screenshots if you want. I don't know if you guys caught the pairing, as Mark was saying, that if that's not pied, then you would either have to say it's Orange Dream, Scrambler, or Calico. And we've got plenty of experience with those. So either that's a scrambler pied on its own, or a scrambler het axanthic pied on its own. So this is pretty interesting development and rightly so. People have been asking, well, what would a single gene look like? Well, here it is in pied, not without pied, obviously, or if you think it's not pied, then there you go too.
Well, I would be willing to bet that it's pied. There's
right.
no question, because I've compared it to everything else that's in the clutch.
I'm sort of playing devil's advocate,
right? Yeah.
Or, but I agree with you completely though, Mark.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so then you hit the MJ axanthic, which is the Marcus Jane axanthic, scrambler pied here.
Yep. And you can see the consistency in the pattern and what the scrambler does to the pattern in pies. The only other snake that kind of does that is Enchi, and I have Enchi pies, and they're nowhere near comparable to scrambler pies.
Yes, but this one really displays that really well. I saw Brian Gundy. I saw your question. I'm gonna get to that in just a second. So yeah, I mean these spots. I'm pointing my cursor like anybody else can see it, but these spots on the back, 20%. There's nothing in Enchi pies that look like that. I agree with you. I think that's fantastic.
There was just no Enchi in the pairing, so
right. That makes it easier.
Having done this for now 27 years, I think I can tell the difference between an Enchi. Know what an Enchi is. So
I'm not going to tell you can't. So somebody else, they could pick that fight. Brian Gundy was asking on this piebald one, does it have a white belly? And I know that we don't have it in front of us to flip around, but do you have a recollection on it?
I don't know. I don't recall.
Gotcha.
I'm not a belly looker. I'm not. I don't really look at bellies other than on yellow bellies for some reason. I don't know why. It's just never been a thing for me. I know a lot of people are into the bellies.
That's cool. I do like on this one, you could kind of see that dividing line where that typical scrambler ringer on a pied would start. It's right in that same spot, that back, 80% back kind of position on it.
And on all kinds of other mutations, you get the back third is what seems to break up the most and really pop in color. And yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing those with us. How about let's look at some that don't have pied and what you look for some of the identifying factors outside of piebald. So here's one that you sent, which is fantastic, and a few things jump out at me, but I'll let you
okay. So
the lead on the description.
This is Super Orange Dream Fire Scrambler, and you can see how the pattern it's taken. It's made it a very reduced pattern, but as it goes, and a lot of blushing, It's also hypo, I believe. But you go towards the back and you're seeing a highly, highly reduced, joining of pattern. And
From the belly to the top.
yeah.
Now, you said super OD, fire, and possible hypo on that one.
I think it is hypo. I'm pretty sure it is hypo.
Okay. I was going to say, I realize these are off the top of your head that you're identifying. Now, this one pattern-wise, though, if I had it right, that was very similar, the very same genes minus the hypo as this one. So this one looked a lot more blushed out, which is what I mean. When I say blushed out, I'm talking the dorsal with the spread and the blushing in it. I don't mean that as a negative way. I relate that a whole lot more to Scrambler and than I would typically on this one, where we're seeing some of the blushing and the pattern coming up from the sides and on the bottom on there. Is that just variation that you find in the combos, or maybe it has something to do with the hypo too?
It depends on, because I have been line breeding these, and some of them come out super extreme like this one does, and some come out like the original male. I mean, I have some here, like for example, this is just, let's do that.
Let me get my buttons right. And we'll do this. There we go.
So this is just an Orange Dream Fire Scrambler.
Yeah, and so that one's kind of in the middle between those two examples that we just looked at. Yeah, I see.
It's not super Orange Dream. It's just got a single dose of Orange Dream. And I mean, try and find an Orange Dream that looks like that.
Right. I had someone in my shop the other day that they hadn't seen a Scrambler in person, and I showed them the two from Antoine that I got, one being Super Orange Dream Scrambler, one Super Orange Dream Fire Scrambler. And that was his exact words. He says, there's no Orange Dream that looks like that by itself.
Right.
Whoops, here we go. Still there. How about this? Talk us through this one. This is a striking animal, just without any description or reason or process why. That's a beautiful animal. If I were to break it down, the clean sides, but then the really dark contrast on top, you still see a little bit of that flaming in between the dark. And I actually think those little spots on the sides really set that off too. I think it ties it all together. What do we have going on here?
That, again, I just sent you a ton of pictures today from my Scrambler catalog, but I believe that is a Super Orange Dream Fire Leopard. And Leopard traditionally really darkens Orange Dream. And but you can see it's not doing that at all here. And the reduction of pattern is, again, part of the Scrambler trait, depending on the gene.
That's wild and wildly inspiring too. I mean, the neat thing is that, and I've said this before, when it comes to just any quote new gene or a gene that hasn't been worked, for as much as some of the others have, it just takes one new ingredient to set other things just way off. That's fantastic. So, say the Orange Dream Scrambler Leopard.
Yeah. Super Orange Dream Fire Leopard Scrambler.
Beautiful. I think that's the last of them that we haven't looked at yet. Talk to us about what you found, or where your thoughts are as far as a super form. Obviously, we would generally classify it as non-recessive. Do you see it as a codom dominant or super form? Any different traits on that, or what evidence have you gathered or beliefs have you gathered on that?
I've produced enough, Super Orange Dream Fire Scramblers, and when I started breeding Scramblers together to try and produce a super, they come out completely different from the Super Orange Dream Fire Scrambler look. I'm trying to see what I got here, because I do have what I think. So let me just do this. This is just a super orange dream scrambler pied.
Okay.
Again, show me a piebald that looks like that and spins like that. I mean, it spins, you know, it's just incredible. But let me find you what I think is a super. Okay, here. So here you saw pictures of the super orange dream fire. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Scrambler. This is what I think is a super version.
Okay. So stretching out some of the or yeah, spreading out some of the darker patterns on top, but they're really actually on the back, they're really broken up though, a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it intensifies the pattern on these compared to just a single gene scrambler.
Yeah.
Now, I'm
gonna pop
speculating
the other
that
one
it's
back up.
super. Yeah, so if you
Let me see if it'll go ahead, Mark. Sorry, I'm playing with the pictures here.
yeah, no problem. No problem. But you can see it really intensifies the pattern even more. And lots of it's, you know, very from the back third, you see the blushing coming up from the this guy doesn't want to cooperate.
I tell you though, as we see him stretch out as he's moving, I see the argument far more clearly now.
Right.
That we get to see his side and the reduction on the side though too.
There we go. Now he's not going anywhere. I don't plan on selling him. But I mean, again, find me a super orange dream fire. That looks, and that's not hypo. Okay.
Right.
Find one that looks like that.
Man, that's beautiful. Mark, will you you'll have to post a picture on Instagram. Your camera's not doing you justice tonight, and I know that's just from some settings and throwing it together on short notice today. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But that snake, that is like that was just enough of a taste for us though. That was very cool. So what exciting directions for Scrambler is there for you when you say you know, your goals are to make beautiful snakes? You talked about semi-retirement, winding down somewhat. What moves to the top of the list of like where you're like, all right, I need to see this. What's got you excited for the future on it?
Well, I'm crossing it into Jag now, and I do have a female. She wouldn't fit on this table. I mean, she's massive, and I believe she's a Jag scrambler, and she's as yellow as a canary, and it's just absolutely insane, the color of this snake. But she weighs about, you know, close to 5,000.
Oh my gosh,
grams. But she is got some nice follicles in her, and I bred her to another scrambler male, nothing with pied. And I believe you have a picture of the male, but without me seeing, I can't really tell. It's a very, very, very yellow male.
Well, like I said, I didn't get all of them uploaded.
Right.
I've got them on the phone, but not updated into the StreamYard. I have to upload them to the actual episode while we're here. Is one of the limitations of StreamYard for me.
So let me show you another snake.
Okay.
Is it easier for me to hold it up like this, or put it down there? So that's a desert ghost, super pastel.
Mark, why don't we switch to the Lazy Susan one? I think that you froze on your regular one. That's okay.
Okay. Are we on the Lazy Susan?
No.
Oh, I've got it up here. I can see it on the screen.
There we are. There we are.
Yeah. So this is just a super pastel Desert Ghost, Scrambler. So again, find a super Desert Ghost pastel that looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have some.
Right. Yeah, they are out there. Yeah.
One of my favorite genes. These guys, they like moving around quite a bit.
Have you gotten Desert Ghost into your Scrambler breedings yet?
Well, that is a Desert Ghost.
That one was. I'm sorry. That's right. That was. Yeah. That was. We were saying we'd seen the super pastel Desert Ghost without Scrambler. I'm sorry. And with the
just straight Desert Ghost.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
Really? No orange dream or fire?
No orange dream. No fire.
Hang on. This is the stuff that people are like, where does the single exist? So that would be it, with obviously the DG on top, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. There was no orange dream in this pairing. And that came, and obviously no pastel. And you can see down near, again, the back to tail, how everything melds together.
Mm-hmm. And it's distinctly different than Orange Dream. There's parts that are similar, but it's distinctly different. I agree.
Very, very clean. But if you look at, for example, the original male, a lot of the characteristics that were in the original male are in this, as far as the crisp cleanness of the yellow, in the snake.
Almost the identical color tone as well.
Mm-hmm.
Really briefly. Yeah. Here's the comparison of the two. Wow. Yeah. Like I say, a lot of people have been, been asking for, well, what does, if, the argument has been, if Scrambler's a gene, show us a Scrambler, to which I thought your answer was fantastic. You haven't set out for, 3 decades to make kind of a boring breed one gene to a normal female. So I really appreciated that rebuttal, but this is fantastic. And that, as far as that's the example right there of single Scrambler DG.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Beautiful snake.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice. Let's talk a little bit about the, the thing that everybody brings up, which is good and fair. But it's the topic of shed testing. And you mentioned earlier, we did this for a really long time without shed testing.
Yeah, we used our eyes.
Yeah, and, talk a little bit about that.
It's funny. Everybody's going, well, where's the shed test? And we're working on a shed test. The problem is, everything I breed is so stacked with genes, it's hard to narrow it down to that one gene. So with this latest clutch, I'm taking all the sheds from it, even from the normals that I think are normals in there, and sending it off to be shed tested along with another ones. We do it up here in Canada, in Montreal. But
that's with Heather, is that correct?
With Heather, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that everybody's on this shed testing bandwagon, and I think it's great to have shed testing, but that's not where we were 26 years ago, when we discovered all these genes. For all these years, it was done with our eyes and done with feel and done with comparison and so on. So, for people to say, I don't believe it until there's a shed test, there weren't people saying, I don't believe it until there was a shed test back then.
Right.
They saw the proof, and there were a lot of subtle genes out there at that time that were, like yellow belly, for example. I mean, who knew, right? It looked pretty normal. And I remember so many people coming to me and saying, can you tell me if this is a yellow belly or not? And they'd bring clutches to me for me to ID because people couldn't ID them. And, some of us, a lot of people, a lot of the pioneers, they had a keen eye. but I think, the biggest, I jokingly said on the weekend, I said, the mistake I made was I gave credit where credit was due. Every time a gene pops up, so I'm responsible for the MJ xanthic. Well, it came from a snake that came from Janie Mousen and Doug Beard that came from Pete Call. And, the blade, which I named, never created, came from Brian Barczyk. And the Scrambler came from Ozzy's collection. The Java, which is another one of my genes, I don't know where that came from. That could have come from anywhere. But, had I said it just popped up in my collection, it would be a different story but soon as it was attached, and what I did was I saw snakes on the internet that people were going like, this is crazy. I've never produced anything like it. I'd phone them up like Chris Hernan. And I said, I sent him a message, Chris, you got time for a chat? And I said, here's my story. This is so-and-so. Where did you get your orange streams from? So on and so on. He got them from Barnhart, which was really close friends with Ozzy, and he'd go over and pick the best orange dreams. And those best orange dreams probably had Scrambler in them. And, so it wasn't that I was the only one that had Scrambler. That Scrambler only came out of my collection. They came out of many collections, but the basis came out of Ozzy's collection. And I was very transparent about that. But then you get penalized for it because they go, well, then it must be attached to Orange Dream. Well, I've shown you pictures of snakes without Orange Dream in it that have the Scrambler gene, what I call the Scrambler gene. So, you can decide for yourself. But all I know is it produces the most outrageous, colorful snakes that maintain their color or only get brighter. And it's what we have been looking for in the ball python industry since day one. Because one of the biggest Achilles heels of the ball python is they brown out with age.
Right. Right. And I won't, Mark, you're more than capable of speaking for yourself. I don't think anybody's knocking shed testing. Mark is talking about participating in shed testing.
Not at all.
And obviously I work closely with Phenome. Let me take up Phenome's side for a moment. To identify where a gene isn't simply getting a shed and going, okay, now we know. It's figuring out where on all of that space on a double helix of a DNA spiral, where those fit in, then verifying it. That stuff takes years. There's a reason that they don't have tests for everything. And there's a lot of reasons. Part of it is time. Part of it is, I talked to Charlie one time and he said, well, there's actually 2 strains of albino, but why am I going to put the research and development into another albino test? He goes, I'm not going to do that. So there's a lot of reasons there. So I don't think the point was don't shed test. Shed testing sucks. That's not the case.
Not at all.
In the meantime, we have to go with the evidence, the scientific evidence. There's if-then statements. We prove, we test, we breed, we prove, and I don't know if you guys noticed, Mark said he was at this 15 years with this gene. So it's not I definitely am not trying to start a screw shed testing
absolutely not
or chatter. No. That's not the case whatsoever. But in the meantime, and I will say also, like, if I'll say you to the listener, to anybody, but it's not specifically towards anybody, there is risk and reward. If you see something and you're an early adopter, sometimes it doesn't pan out and sometimes it's the best thing that you can be ahead on. And there is a price attached to that. So I think that comes with the territory. And that's something that's been even more maximized with shed testing, where you got to take the question of, do you want to take the risk and the leap? And I'll just speak for myself. I was in Toronto. It was the day after we'd gone to dinner at your house, Mark. So within a 24-hour period, I saw Mark's collection, and I'd never seen snakes like that. I've been in a lot of collections, and I've been at this a little bit of time myself. Then the next day, we went to the CRBE, and I was walking by Antoine DPR's table. And I remember being purposefully in the middle of the aisle because I didn't want to get caught up in snake conversations. I just needed to say hello to a couple people, but I had to get back on the air with Chris. We were doing the promo and the media from there, and there was a snake from the middle of the aisle. And these are big aisles. These aren't like Tinley. Like you could get through these aisles. These are big aisles. And I saw a snake, and I stopped and I walked over and I said, Antoine, what is that? And he said, that's the Super OD Scrambler. And right then I said, I can't ask you to hold it for me, but how do we make a deal on this? And he was very gracious. I ended up buying 2 from him, and he got them to Tinley for me. So I have those 2, but that was what made me buy Scrambler. I had no idea what it was. And I like the idea that if I could see it in a snake, whatever it takes to make that snake is in that snake. I know that's a circular logic, but that was going to be my whole pitch tonight. Who cares if it's a beautiful snake and I can recreate that snake with the ingredients that I see in that snake? Then I want it. I'll figure the rest out. I'll let the chips fall where they are. But I think you've done a great job, Mark, where there's not much question when we start looking at a couple of the ones that you just showed, and then piebalds like this, where you go, okay, we know the pairing. We start doing a process of, deduction and eliminating what it can't be. You're left with, there's a Scrambler pied, but the ones that you showed earlier that were just Scrambler DG as well. Fantastic, man. I think it's super cool.
Well, the snake you got from Antoine, he's a great breeder, great young breeder. And I sold Brian from MBK, who Antoine works for or works with.
Yep.
I sold him I believe it was a Super Orange Dream Fire Calico Scrambler, and it was an insane snake. And that's how he produced the snakes that you got. So
yeah.
And it's great when you walk around and you see these amazing snakes that just pop. Because I don't know about you, when there's so many snakes on the table, you kind of glaze over, and you want to be able to glaze over and just boom, something smack you in the face. And that seems to be what Scrambler does.
It's the magic bullet. And I use this example a lot because it, any deep niche of anything, there's guitar nerds, there's snake nerds, there's car nerds, but that's a really narrow patch of who we're trying to reach. And I joke with people, but I'm kind of being serious that it's almost like a joke. If you have to explain it, maybe it's not that funny. If you have to explain why it's a cool snake, maybe it's not. If it doesn't speak for itself and jump out. Yeah. And of course, that's not to dismiss things. And we know that there's hets and there's building blocks and ingredients and all of that. But the best ones are when you don't have to explain anything and people go, what is that? Usually with a couple extra words in the middle. You know what I mean? And those are the very, very best, I think.
Yeah. And I just, want to back up what you said as far as shed testing. I remember when shed testing first came out, I had calls from breeders that were irate because they thought, oh, now everybody's going to have an advantage that we didn't have, because a lot of us grew our collections on 50% POS hats,
right?
Right. I mean, that's the reality. I can tell you all my recessives that I eventually produced visuals all came from 50% POS het females.
Wow.
You'd keep back all of them. And I mean, when I first got into caramels, I bought a het male. I couldn't afford a visual caramel. I bought a het male. I paid $5,500 US for a het male, a brown snake.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a whole lot of faith right there, right?
Right. So you hope you're hitting all these females in these clutches, and you got to produce twice as many as you really want, because only 50% on, law of averages are going to be hets. Now you can get them shed tested. Brilliant. I've got no problem with that whatsoever, because, we have to evolve. We have to move forward. Technology is going to do that. So let's celebrate that technology, but let's not forget that we used to identify these genes, and I'm not talking about the obvious ones, like albinos and leucistics and so on. We used to have to identify them with our eyes, and that's what we went on. And, we'd breed them. How many times do you hear people say, I've got a dinker project, a dinker project? That's what these projects were. They were all dinker projects, so now there's probably not as many dinker projects, but because there's less snakes coming out of Africa and so on, because we have them here now. But back then, everybody was hoping for their own gene. And, I've been lucky. I've had 4 of them. And I'm aiming for number 5. I've got a snake that I'm hoping is going to prove out. I'm calling it the Alfonso di Credenza.
Okay. All right. Wait,
I'm just kidding.
I'm
just kidding.
The old ABC. Huh?
Yeah, no, it's called, if it does prove out, I'm going to call it the Wave. But it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool snake. It's kind of GHI-ish, but better.
Okay.
So we'll see. But I'm not, I'm not selling any hets right now.
Jared makes a good point. Every new morph has to go through the old school proving, the old school eye test, the old school pos hets, and figuring it out before a shed test will ever be developed for it. That's a very, very astute point, actually.
And let me just add this. There were a lot of hets that had markers. I mean, pieds were famous for having markers. And I can tell you, I bought some het pieds from a very reputable breeder that weren't het pieds.
Right.
That had markers on them. And they just assumed, oh, it's got the markers, it's a het. They couldn't test or anything like that. But, they came from het males or whatever, or het females. They were probably 66%ers and they had the markers, but they did not prove out to be pieds. And I'm not saying in 1 clutch. I'm saying in 4 clutches.
I've heard those stories,
right?
and obviously we're not going to throw names around, but I've heard that it was very, it wasn't uncommon to run into that in the past. So it's, there are benefits to it. How, have you gotten any feedback from Heather? I realize that you're just now sending the sheds, but has she gotten other sheds on this gene? How far into the research is she? Is this very, very new? Like not even started new, or where do you think?
I sent her a bunch of sheds and she said they're just, I was breeding, 3 and 4 gene animals to 3 and 4 gene animals. And it was just, she said, I need basic,
right.
What you think is a base scrambler, or just 2 genes or this and that. So that's what I'm working on. I haven't been as, on it as I should be, because I got other things I'm doing as well. It's just hard. And what was happening was I was sending in sheds, and they would, because I have them on cocoa mulch, she said, we can't use the shed. They're too dirty. It's not good. So what I'm doing now is, soon as they're about to shed, I move them into a clean tub, no cocoa mulch or anything, just paper towel, and with moisture, and so they're not soiled, basically.
That's an interesting point that you bring up. First, that they would prefer the closest to a single gene example of a shed, which you've mentioned several times. But if your collection is full of pieds, DGs, hypos, super orange dreams with great other genes mixed in, to ask or expect, I wouldn't say expect. I'm sure Heather's grateful for anything that any help you could provide. But for the populace to say, well, we just need a shed test. Well, who's going to say, you know what? Let me take a pause on breeding these badass, also not inexpensive animals, and step backwards from that, and then change the way that you're caring for your animals as well. I never thought about that angle. That's a big ask when somebody's already put in all the work, and there's clearly a demand and an interest, because as I said at the very beginning, we only care about the cool stuff. If it wasn't cool, we wouldn't give a damn.
Absolutely.
Nobody would care about it.
And the female from the clutch that you showed, she's just a calico female, double-headed xanthic pied. She's probably, I'm going to say a 20 or a 19. I just could never get her gravid. I tried and tried and tried. And the most basic pied male that I have, that is Scrambler, was just an Orange Dream Scrambler pied. And really, I've got what I consider to be way better, hypo-pied Scrambler or Super Orange Dream hypo-pied Scramblers that I could be breeding. But I kept this male back particularly for this purpose, and this is why this is the first year that I've used them for breeding. In order to scale it back, to try and get that normal,
right? To kind of distill it backwards. Yeah. Well, thank you for the efforts. I don't honestly know a whole lot of breeders that wouldn't just go, look, I'll give you the sheds that I have, but to derail what I'm working on and take the extra time, I ask people to put themselves in that position. So that's a challenge both for the shed testers and for the breeders and for the for the marketplace and the audience. So Mark, you've been generous with your time, you're generous with your sheds. Where can people check out what you have available, and where can people see more of your scramblers if they don't know already?
Well, I've got snakes on Morph Market, and I've got, Instagram is where I post most of my stuff, like pictures of my snakes. And it's also on Facebook. The Marcus Jane Ball Python Facebook page is the best place. But, if you're interested, just if you got questions, send me your questions. I'll send you pictures. But, one thing I want to say is one of the arguments was that I heard recently, and honestly, I don't watch a lot of podcasts. I apologize. I do, catch yours occasionally, but not all of them. But one of the things is, how can you sell them for so much money? Why you ask? Not me, but other people asking a lot for these snakes. But when Super Orange Dream first came out, and that was 2011, I believe, I paid 10,500, and that was a deal. And there was no shed testing for that snake then. And arguably, I would say that when Justin Kabolka came online, prices went up on so many animals to the point that people were spending $20,000, $30,000 for snakes. And so, asking a lot for a snake that has proved to produce absolutely stunning animals is not out of the ordinary. And it's hard to start low and work your way up. I think if you like the snake and you like what it does, you buy it. If you don't, that's your choice.
I agree. And like I said, I think that goes back to if you like what you see and you want to be able to reproduce it, then it makes sense. And the market will decide. Like I've said before, the market's undefeated. I mean, the market will decide if the prices are appropriate or not, and it's worth what's between those two people. Mark, my apologies for a brief distraction. Audience, anybody is welcome here. Anybody is welcome to bring up any comment that you want. But if you come in berating people or have something to say about a guest in my own place, thanks. Adios. Have a good day. So, anyhow, back to regular scheduled programming. Last question for you, Mark, and not even snake related. Where's big on your travel list this year? Where's your favorite? Where are you going this year? Where's something new that you're going to experience out there in the world?
We're going to do Colombia. We're doing a river cruise in Colombia.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
Wow.
that'll be exciting. I mean, last year I did Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand, and a few other, Mexico. We love Mexico. My wife's in Tulum right now, and she said I'd love it down there. So we're probably going to go down there for a week. But as far as more exotic location, it's going to be Colombia.
Okay. I know I said that was the last question, but are you going to see the hippos if they're still there? I know there's a little bit of a removal thing, but
Escobar's
yeah,
hippos.
Escobar's hippos. Are you gonna get? I mean, if you're gonna go on a river cruise, I would be. That'd be one of my questions.
I don't know. I think it's a pretty big boat, but hippos are amazing swimmers. Are they in the wild now? The hippos? They let
Yeah,
them out?
they've become feral. There's a
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
Wow.
they set out to castrate them to stop reproduction, and I think they're just on a open season now. Unfortunately, I could be wrong. I could be misreporting that, but that's what I think. I've always enjoyed sort of the just like how rich would you have to be like, I'm in South America, but I want some hippos in my river. I'm gonna
Well,
let's
why
bring them
would you
here.
want hippos anyways? I don't understand, but I guess,
Rational thought is not part of this,
to each their own,
Yeah,
but that's not an animal that I would go for.
I would not mess with
hippo.
them, not one bit. No, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mark, thanks so much. Audience, if you didn't catch it, Mark popped on very, very short notice today. Very generous with your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to host you. Thanks as always for your generosity and care. And just on a personal note, thanks for the timely texts and phone calls every now and again. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thank you, man.
My pleasure.
Well, I hope to see you again. Audience, come back next week. I will have DJ Van Wyck from Reptiles for Centuries. Same time, same place. Mark, sit tight for just a second if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Audience, see you soon. Thanks, everybody.